whatever good we did. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that to them, justice was done. See, a just world is a sane world. There was nothing sane about Chernobyl.
April 25th, 1986. It was a quiet and peaceful night at the Chernobyl 4 nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Anatoly Dyatlov and his crew of trained engineers were preparing for a test on the reactor on how long the turbines could spin to provide power for the surrounding area in the event of a main electrical power supply failure. While preparing for the test, Dyatlov authorized the disengagement of the automatic shutdown mechanisms in place in the event of a reactor failure. While carrying out the test, the reactor reached a critical level of failure, and with the automatic shutdown systems disengaged, the engineers resorted to shutting down the reactor manually. This decision changed the course of history. The engineers maneuvered the graphite shutdown rods into place and began to slowly descend them upon the volatile core. Once the rods contacted the volatile core, the hot fuel present on the core caused an exponential fragmentation of the rods as well as a significant increase in the production of steam in the reactor. This increase of steam caused the pressure in the volatile reactor to rise incredibly quickly and violently. The pressure increase caused a panel protecting the reactor to tear off of the reactor housing, leading to the built-up pressure exiting the reactor in an explosive manner. This explosion sent radioactive fission material spiraling into the atmosphere above. Seconds after the fission material was released into the atmosphere, the hot graphite that was in the core was launched in all directions at the Chernobyl 4 nuclear power plant, causing a massive explosion that was heard, felt, and seen for hundreds of miles. After the explosion, 200 to 300 tons of water were pumped onto the molten core to quell the inferno. But ultimately, this attempt was shut down only 12 hours later after the water showed to be futile in calming the reactor. Over the next 2 weeks, crews of firemen worked both day and night to rid the roof of the radioactive shards of graphite so that helicopters would be able to fly above the reactor and pour sand, clay, and other materials onto it in hopes of lowering the radiation levels even further. This process entailed teams of 6 firefighters in lead-plated clothing running onto the roof with the goal of shoveling as much graphite off the roof in 90 seconds. The reason for the group staying on the roof so little time is both the radiation levels as well as the graphite maintaining a temperature over 1,000 degrees Celsius. The Russian response. In 1963, the Soviet Union adopted public safety protocols stating that a civilian evacuation in a nuclear event would not be mandatory unless the civilian population reached the intake of 75 roentgens. A roentgen is a unit of measurement used to measure the amount of radiation in a given area. The lower the number, the better. Because the roentgen level was still not met, the senior medical officer was still wary about giving President Gorbachev an order for evacuation. The Russian government mandated that all cell lines were cut to the surrounding areas, especially the city of Pripyat. The government also mandated that the engineers who took place working at Chernobyl 4 to not share any details about the events that transpired at the power plant. Those who went to the power station were taken by the Russian government to be questioned, and most of them never made it home. Still, without alerting the public of the danger that they were in, the roads of Pripyat were being treated with water and military transports were flying in every day. Children at school were sent home with iodine tablets and told not to return until further notice. And police roamed the streets with lead-plated armor and gas masks. The population of the surrounding area was in immediate danger without even knowing. April 26, 1986. The scientists present at Chernobyl 4 nuclear reactor convinced the officials to order a complete evacuation of Pripyat. The officials present in the area were given only 2 hours to make a complete list of citizens who were suitable for the evacuation. Children were given priority in the evacuation, women were next, men followed suit, and those who were over the age of 60 were evacuated last. 12,000 buses were called in to evacuate the 47,000 citizens, and they were only given 4 hours to evacuate. During the 4 hours of evacuation, the rhodogen levels of the surrounding area increased by over 50%. The citizens of Pripyat moved quickly and efficiently to the evacuation site, yet they had no information on the danger they were in. The United States and the late President Ronald Reagan were completely in shock after hearing the news of the Chernobyl accident. The Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, monitored the rhodogen numbers from the safety of the United States and concluded that the radiation from the explosion had traveled into the upper atmosphere and had made its way across Western Europe in some cases. The radiation made its way to central France and even England. The United States government placed no blame on the Soviet government for the explosion and was even willing to send people and resources to Pripyat as a humanitarian effort. That is not to say that the United States did not want information on the accident so that they could further their own nuclear studies due to the Cold War. Overall, the U.S. wanted the citizens of Pripyat and the surrounding area to be safe. As I said at the beginning of this video, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster changed the course of history forever. Whether it changed it for the better or the worse is still to be decided. We know that the effects of this disaster are far-reaching and are even seen today. For example, children who were exposed to the radiation at Chernobyl 4 developed non-cancerous diseases in and around the thyroid. The reason that the children were most affected from this is because the radioactive iodine released by the reactor was highly attracted to the proteins found in milk that is primarily ingested by children. Chernobyl also had the effect of ruining the legitimacy of Gorbachev and his rule of the USSR. His inability to make a clear and concise decision on how to fix the disaster started the gradual and not so graceful fall of the Soviet Union.
To be a scientist is to be naive. We are so focused on our search for truth, we fail to consider how few actually want us to find it. But it is always there, whether we see it or not, whether we choose to or not. The truth doesn't care about our needs or wants. It doesn't care about our governments, our ideologies, our religions. It will lie in wait for all time. And this, at last, is the gift of Chernobyl. Where I once would fear the cost of truth, now I only ask, what is the cost of lies?